What's up, followers? Dave here from CNC 3D. So in this video today, we're going to be taking a look about some of the new features that have been put into our Nighthawk CNC controller, and also how you can access those features through our CNC 3D Commander software. So we thought we'd make this video. Basically, we've done a bit of research here, and the general perception is that our Nighthawk controller is an excellent hobby grade controller. Even if you hop on Gemini on Google and look up the Nighthawk, it has really good reviews on there as well, but it says that it is a hobby controller. So I sat down and I looked at what the big end of town was doing controller wise, and basically tried to implement whatever I could into our Nighthawk to shift the thinking between it being a good hobby controller and a commercial controller. And long story short, this video has now come about to discuss some of the new features. So let's just jump straight in. Now, I'm going to start this video here at the point where some of you are going to get the latest version of the Nighthawk firmware, and also you are going to be getting a new unified firmware update. Some of you have probably already done this to 2.6, but I thought I would cover this for those of you upgrading from 2.4 or version 2.5 of the firmware to the latest version. Basically, what I've done is I've unified the previous dual axis and 4-axis firmware into one collective firmware, and then you can literally choose between switching between dual axis mode or 4-axis mode just by being in the peripherals tab. But let's just jump straight in and connect up to one of our Nighthawks here, which at the moment is currently running 2.5. So this is the message that you're going to get. So a unified firmware update is available for your Nighthawk controller. This replaces the separate dual axis and 4-axis firmwares with a single image. The axis topology is now selected by Commander at runtime, so your machine's current configuration will be preserved. So it's saying here that you currently have 2.50 dual Y, and we're going to give you 2.6 unified mode DY, where basically it means dual axis on the Y axis, because you can actually choose which axis it is that you wish to slave with the A axis on a Nighthawk. So basically, we're just going to do this update now. So for those of you that don't know how firmware updates work on the Nighthawk, this is basically what happens. So you download an update for Commander, and if there's a firmware update, it'll pop up that first box. And then you just need to hit start, and then this will basically go ahead and load the latest firmware on there for you. So we're just going to wait until this completes, and then let's jump in and take a look at 2.6.
A few moments later.
Okay, awesome. So firmware update has completed successfully. Let's close out of that. Now, we do recommend turning your Nighthawk off for around 5 seconds and turning it back on. In this case, I'm just going to connect straight up to it. As we can see, it's connected, Nighthawk CNC 2.6 dual Y. So let's just unlock down the bottom here. Now, first thing is we're just going to jump into the peripherals tab, one of the more important tabs within Commander, and a lot of you are probably also very familiar with it as well. So down the bottom here, you can see that you have this dual axis homing Y button down here. Now, this is actually very important, because what this is basically telling you is that on your Nighthawk, the A axis is going to be a dual axis slave of the Y axis. Now, keep in mind, if you were to set this to off, that would automatically put your controller into 4-axis mode. So the A axis would be an independent A axis, which could be rotary or linear, depending on your needs. So be very careful with this. Now, I have done my best to make sure that when you update from 2.5 to 2.6, I knew whether or not you were on dual axis or you had 4-axis firmware. So I have set this accordingly for you to make sure that it's right. So theoretically, you should be good to go straight away after doing the firmware update. But it's more so for people who may wish to switch from, say, for example, a dual Y axis to an independent A axis. You can obviously do that just by going off. Obviously, if you want a little bit more info, you can click on here right now. And of course, if you're going to have dual axis homing, you got to make sure that you have a limit switch on both sides of that axis, as in wherever the two motors are, wherever the slave motor is, has to have a limit switch in the same position in order for it to be able to home correctly. But a lot of you are probably used to this already, so it's probably not a big one. It's more just for the new people that may just be starting out with a machine or a controller that actually supports dual axis homing. So moving forward, let's jump into some of this cool stuff, which I have tried very hard to separate the Nighthawk from the stigma of being classed as a hobby controller. So I looked at what the big end of town was doing. Some of the brands like Haas and Sile and all of those really expensive controllers that are sort of, more than $5,000 or $6,000 to $10,000 just for the controller itself. And I had a look at the features that they had. And so if you go into the operation tab here within Commander, and you go down the bottom here, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of new tabs now. Now, the first one in here is general operations that all of you are probably familiar with. But now you also have the option of doing backlash compensation. So what this essentially allows you to do, and just forgive me, my numbers in here are actually theoretical just while I was testing things, and everything works exactly as expected. So feel free to play with this, but basically backlash compensation, and there is a document here if you click on learn more. I'm just going to try to bring this into view here for you. But this basically covers the input shaping and the backlash compensation. So feel free to go through this document here and just learn a little bit about what it does. But let's say, for example, if you had a belt-driven machine and the machine moves all the way to one side, and then basically when it comes to an abrupt stop, it can slightly over travel sometimes with belt drive systems or with linear rack and pinion systems. And so you can actually compensate for that to make sure that the machine actually goes exactly where it's supposed to. Essentially, it can take a machine that I guess has a little bit of slop in its motion and essentially offset for that, which then led me towards the next thing, which was input shaping. Now, this is very, very important, and this is what essentially sets to date the Nighthawk and the big end of town when it comes to high-end controllers. This is kind of what separates those controllers from the rest of the controllers on the market. And basically, what I've actually done here is I have implemented, so as you can see, there's a few different types for each of your axes. Now, if you did have a 6-axis Nighthawk, which Commander supports, and we are releasing the Nighthawk Pro hopefully this year, you'll be able to do this for all of your axes. On the Nighthawk Pro boards coming out in the future, there will be an accelerometer that you can magnetize to the side of your spindle, or you can glue to the side of your spindle, and every single time you home your machine, it will automatically update your settings because it can see the ringing that's occurring. Basically, again, you can click on this Learn More button here, and this will take you in for how to actually set it up and which option is best for you to choose. But basically, our input shaping system here supports all 4 methods designed by NASA in the 70s. Basically, there's a variety of different types that you can choose from. So, obviously ZV, you've got ZVD, but read this document in here to learn more about it. Now, it did seem a little bit tricky to do it, so what I've done is I've set up a calibration wizard for you to be able to test things, so that you can actually calibrate this for your axes. So if you take a look here, you can choose obviously which axis you wish to calibrate. Now, it's important to notice that when you do X or Y, it will actually do both at the same time. So feel free to measure the ringing lines on there as per the parameters on here for you to be able to calculate what to set your frequency to. And obviously, once you choose your respective axis, your cut depth, etc., then you can choose to run the calibration test. So feel free, again, to click on this Learn More button, which will take you into the document that basically explains how to actually do it and how for you to choose the best options for you. But basically, the purpose of input shaping is it's supposed to take a machine which otherwise is not capable of cutting something as cleanly as a much more bulkier rigid machine can, and it uses its imperfections to its benefit by adjusting the stepper motors so that if it is going to chatter or ring on your material and leave artifact marks on the edges of your cuts, essentially you can completely negate that by enabling input shaping on your controller. It's the same logic that a lot of the high-end 3D printers use now, like the Bamboo Labs printers and the new Creality range, the K1s and the K2s. They all use input shaping in order to do things as fast as possible and as accurately as possible. And basically, you can now do the same thing with your CNC to get essentially the absolute best out of your cuts. So even if you had a really entry-level hobby-grade machine, like one of our U-Carve machines or any of the, say, Two Trees machines or any of those sort of Chinese machines or the Creality ones, you can essentially get the performance of a much more rigid machine out of it, which is the most important thing to do. Moving on, there is an automatic tool changing section in here. Now, I do need to mention that this particular setting, while all of these values are being saved to your controller, you can't really leverage them at this point in time with a normal Nighthawk because it doesn't support the other inputs and outputs needed in order to be able to do a traditional air solenoid actuated spindle, so an ATC spindle, but that will be available in our Nighthawk Pro CNC controllers, which support 6 independent axes or 5 with a rotary carousel. So these are the standard features that you would expect for the tool changing, and it is the direction that we're traveling in. So these settings all do currently work. As I said, they just are not currently fully functional on the Nighthawk itself. A couple of other things to mention in this version of the Nighthawk. So what I have actually done is I've allowed you now to be able to upload either a file or multiple files out of one folder, or you can upload an entire folder now. So if you click on upload folder, you can choose exactly which file you wish to open from here, or folder, and it will upload the entire contents. Now, previously, you weren't able to delete folders off your SD card until you cleared every file and folder inside there. So as you can see here, this folder test has 4 files and 1 folder in there, which also has 4 files. On this 2.6 firmware, you can now select this parent folder and click on delete selected. And basically it will go ahead and delete all of the files, all of the folders, and then clear the folder off there for you. And then obviously if you want to now, you can choose to either re-upload job files or folders directly. This has been a heavily requested feature, and I'm really, really glad to bring it all to you now. Look, I think we've pretty much covered all of the changes here within the Nighthawk and the CNC 3D Commander. I just really wanted to basically put as much as I possibly could in there for you guys, so you guys can get the absolute best out of your CNC machines, regardless of how capable they actually are. So thanks, guys, very much for your support over the years. I'm going to continue to keep innovating here and trying to stay at the absolute pinnacle of technology for both our hobby CNC people and also the people that have retrofitted their Nighthawks to their industrial machines. So there are quite a few out there in the wild, and I know that you guys have been dying for some of these features, so I'm really glad to bring them all to you. Thanks, guys, for everything. You have a fantastic day, and we'll catch up soon.